the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Before we get started, I want to say something about going through a divorce. It can feel hectic, stressful, and it's just a precarious time where you might have low self-esteem and it's just hard to stop feeling stressed and slow down. If you feel this way, I want to highly recommend Brittany Baker, LCSW, a therapist who works with couples, adults, and teens during hard, stressful times, which includes divorce. I've known Brittany for a few years. She is so smart, so warm, a great, great therapist, and I really think she has a dedication for helping people through divorce. She serves Illinois, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and Colorado. And you can learn more about Brittany at nixbakerwellness.com. I also want to tell you about a really good divorce coach. Her name is Karen Covey, and Karen is a former practicing divorce attorney and mediator turned divorce coach. So guess what? If you hire Karen, you're getting the benefit of somebody who knows the laws, somebody who's been a mediator so she can coach you on mediation. And Karen is just full of knowledge and very dedicated. She will hold your hand and help you make decisions so that you have the best possible divorce outcome. You can find Karen at KarenCovey.com. Lastly, I want to recommend a wonderful divorce mediator named Michael Cohen. And I want to tell you about Michael. He spent 38 years working as a financial consultant in a large retail and healthcare company, and he was finding himself doing a lot of mediation in his career. But when he went through a litigious divorce himself, he realized that he had a calling to become a mediator to help people going through a divorce with their parenting plans and help them be the best possible co-parents that they can be. Love Michael. If you have kids and you're focused on parenting plans and being great co-parents, Michael is the mediator for you. You can find him at michaelsmediation.com. And you can find Brittany, Karen, and Michael in the Trusted Professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling. When people decide that they want to get a divorce, I think it's normal to say, okay, I'm ready. I've had enough of this. I can't live like this any longer, and I just want to do it. And then they start the process. They call a divorce attorney and they start the process. The problem is, a lot of times when people do this, they're not prepared. And so my guest today and I are going to talk about how to prepare for divorce before you actually make a move. And it's going to be so helpful to you because it's going to give you a much better experience and outcome. But also, even if you're already in the divorce process and you're thinking, well, this isn't any of use to me because I'm already in the process and I already made some mistakes, we're going to help you adjust those mistakes and so that you can, moving on, have a better experience and outcome from this point forward. My guest is Kimberly Miller, a divorce attorney, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified financial planner, but Kimberly is also the founder of Partwise, which is a divorce education platform to empower you with knowledge for a well-informed divorce. Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this because I think that with all of your experience as a lawyer, as a therapist, as a financial planner, as a divorce mediator, your platform, Partwise, is perfect for what we're talking about today. Like, and we're going to get into what Partwise is. I'm going to ask you some questions about it. So if people want to learn more about it and sign up, they can. But don't you agree with me? In your experience, have you seen people who they say, okay, when you were a practicing divorce attorney, they'd say, okay, I'm leaving my husband. I can't take this anymore. And they weren't really prepared.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head on kind of I think there's two types of preparation. There's sort of the emotional and the just being ready because it's a big step and just getting to the point where you're willing to say it and maybe act on it is huge. But then there is also the being ready for the actual decisions and process. And like you said as well, being more prepared leads you to better outcomes for sure, but also a better process. And I feel like so many of us have stories, and I saw so many clients who the process drags on. It costs time and money and emotional capital that if you could just maybe do a little bit of work on the front end, it could potentially help there as well.
And then how about after divorce, you had such a bad experience if you weren't prepared that caused so much conflict between you and your now ex that there's zero chance to have a good, healthy co-parenting relationship because there's so much resentment. I'm actually talking about myself.
Many
And
people have that story for sure.
yeah, and it's so sad because it didn't have to be that way. And I will say, in my own defense, I got divorced in 2008, and there wasn't any of these. Well, for sure, there wasn't Partwise, your program. There weren't any divorce coaches and mediators who really wanted to help people um, get divorced with a good co-parenting relationship. That really wasn't around. So now that it is, we are here. I want to tell my listeners to help you have a really good divorce outcome because it will affect your life for years and years and decades after the divorce. You're going to thank us. So, Kimberly, let's talk about the emotional journey of divorce. What does that look like? And what can people do so that they know they're emotionally ready to start this process?
Yeah, I like to think of the emotional side of things as if we think about where you get to in divorce. I kind of used to think as a kid, I loved that movie, Chorus Line, where all of the actors are standing in a line and they would have them step forward one at a time. And I sort of feel like people are out there like standing at that line and they're like, do I want a divorce or not? Like, am I going to step forward or not? And unfortunately, they step forward and then it's like they're just running to the finish line. And so emotionally, like ultimately, I feel like emotionally, the low point should be when you decide. And from then on, you should be building positivity and moving forward. And so often, your story, Jackie, is not unique in the sense of particularly years ago. I think it was like burn everything down before you started rebuilding. And so by accepting that it's an emotionally challenging process, that you are making a step that has long lasting emotional implications, never mind the financial and parenting and all of that. It is a big decision. And I think acknowledging the weight of it from an emotional side, the therapy in me kind of I interpret it and take on the stages of grief because I do think you're grieving a loss, even if you're confident in your decision and you know you want to do it. That doesn't mean there still might not be those stages of denial and grief and bargaining where you're like, maybe I should just stick around for the kids. We hear that a lot. And yet, research shows that it's not better to wait. You're better off actually to demonstrate for your children that you can, move forward in healthy ways to move ahead. But I think emotionally, what I think you need to do is get a support system. And for some people, that's family. I always caution family is not always your best support system. You want to make sure whoever you have in your corner is really there to help make you stronger. But like you said, coaches or a therapist, a discernment counselor, and even a really good lawyer that you connect with and feels like they're not just there to advocate on the legal side, they're there to really support you. Those are the people that I think can help in the emotions.
Okay, now when I was getting divorced, we went back and forth for like a while. I kind of feel like you might disagree with me, but I feel like it's normal to say, you know what, we're going to try again. Because then when you do get to that point where you know you're definitely out, you've already gotten back together. Like we got back together for 3 months and tried it and then broke up again. And I feel like if you don't do that, you might always wonder, you sometimes you have to really get to that bottom low point where this is so awful that no matter how hard divorce is, this is the choice I want to make because nothing can be worse than being in this horrible marriage.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that back and forth is supernatural, and common. I think there's also the other side, which is some people just know. And when you know, it's okay. If you can confidently move forward and you know, then move forward. But that back and forth, I do think is natural. I think it's hard though, right? Because you have to communicate then. And sometimes you've already communicated, I think I want this. Then you get back into the married state and you're like, we're together. And now you have to have that conversation a second time. And unless you're both really aligned, that's fine. But if you're not, and one of you is ready to go and the other one isn't, it can be challenging, but not anything that you can't get through.
Well, you're weighing the decisions when you're first deciding if you should divorce and you're doing the back and forth. You're weighing, do I want to move out of my house? Do I really love this person? Do I see a future? Is it easier to stay? Is it better for the kids? Am I willing to sacrifice my own happiness? So these are the kinds of things that are going through your mind. If you're listening to this, you might be like, yes, I'm doing this exact thing right now. But eventually, I believe, and this is only my opinion, that if you go back and forth, it's great. But then you do, I'd say 99% of people reach the point where they know it's the right decision. And that's great because then you can say, okay, this is really scary. I'm terrified. I'm not going to have as much money. I might have to go back to work. My poor kids, but it's still the better choice. And once you make the choice, I remember a therapist telling me the worst part is over. You made the decision.
I think that conversation is one of the hardest conversations people have. Yeah, for sure. Once you are deciding, communicating that decision, whether it's just telling your spouse that's what you want or taking the step of like serving papers, if that's the path that you're going down, I do think that is one of the absolute hardest steps. And just backing up to dealing with the emotional and the back and forth and the worry that maybe it's not the right choice or maybe it is. That's where I think education and understanding the other side of it, the actual decisions you're making are really can be really helpful in helping you make that decision. Because I have people who come in who can't even imagine what is a parenting schedule? What does that even mean? Like they can't imagine what that looks like. And then you start talking through the actual logistics of it or the specifics of time and it sometimes just feels a little bit more comfortable when you just know a little bit more and can picture what your future might look like.
It's so funny you should say that because I was just going to go to a break and I was going to tell everybody when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about why education is key to a smoother divorce and a better outcome. Perfect. You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff and I'm your host. I'm here today with Kimberly Miller, a divorce attorney, a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified financial planner, and the founder of her wonderful divorce education platform, Partwise, which is part-wise.com. Check it out. We're going to go to the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the importance of education, and then we're going to talk about Partwise. We'll be right back. Holly Norman has been a real estate agent since 2003. She has a background and experience in interior design, She basically 10 years ago decided to become a solo agent. She's the founder of Chris Alex Real Estate Group and now has a team of agents in the Atlanta area and support staff who specialize in assisting buyers and sellers, relocation, the luxury market, and of course, divorce. Holly is wonderful. She's so dedicated. So if you're looking for a real estate agent in the Atlanta area, I would highly recommend Holly. And you can find her at chrisalexrealestate.com. I also want to talk about a wonderful divorce attorney in Alabama. His name is Matt Butts, and Matt is so experienced, so knowledgeable, and I truly feel like he has this positive energy. Really, like if I hired Matt, I would feel very comfortable knowing that he had my back in a courtroom. If you want to learn more about Matt, he's a solo practitioner. He can help you with divorce, family law, prenuptial and postnuptial agreements, victims advocacies, DUIs, and municipal court offenses. You can find Matt at mattbuttslaw.net, and you can find both Holly and Matt in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Are you thinking about divorce, but you don't know if you're prepared? That's what we're talking about today. The importance of preparation and what that looks like and why you shouldn't just call a divorce attorney and just go. What you can do to prepare. My guest is Kimberly Miller. Kimberly is the founder of her online education platform that empowers people with knowledge for a well-informed divorce. It's part-wise.com. Kimberly, this is now really your thing, okay? And I want to tell my listeners, Kimberly was a divorce attorney for 20 years, so she knows what she's talking about. She then became a therapist while she was a divorce attorney and did both, and then decided to do mediation, which she still does, and also decided to get a CFP certification so that she could help her clients more with mediation. So she certainly has all the knowledge and experience. And I bet you this platform, Partwise, is amazing. So tell us first why education and how education will get you a better divorce and a better outcome.
I think that in anything that you do, knowing more is helpful. But when we're talking about these life altering decisions, so many people go into it without knowledge, or with just the fear and worry because you don't even know what questions to ask, much less what the answers are. And so, what we were talking about before the break about kind of the emotional side of it and how scary it can be and how worrisome it is, I think knowledge counters that. It just helps you feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident. And the areas to learn, a lot of people are like, I don't need education. That's what I'm going to hire a lawyer for, or I'm going to hire, a coach or a financial neutral for, or a mediator can walk me through it. And they absolutely can. And that is part of their role. But ultimately, I think divorce law is really interesting. It's the only area of the law in which you can make agreements that are not what the law would do. So you can come up with any agreements you want. If you and your spouse agree, you can do that even if a court would do something completely different. So how do you know what is best for you unless you truly understand what your options are and what questions even need to be asked? So I have clients, a lot of people, particularly during COVID, wanted to do this on their own. It saves money. People who get along think we can just figure this all out on our own and work it out. And without a reliable, consistent voice to educate you, you end up going down paths that can be really frustrating and you get inaccurate information. And then all of a sudden, you end up with more adversity, more cost, needing more support than if you were just able to get some of that information on your own up front.
Okay, now you bring up a really interesting point about divorce is the only type of legal process that we actually have control over. Like, God forbid you get accused of something and you're like on trial. You
Yeah.
don't really have control. But when you're in a divorce, you have control of your outcome. And I think, Kimberly, what's so great about what you're saying about education and what's so great about Partwise is that if you almost have to like, it's almost like taking a course, but it's fascinating and it's interesting. It's not boring because it's your life. You know that your life is at stake here, the quality of your life, and you're learning about the legal process, the financial impact, custody, co-parenting, post-divorce life, and everything about your house that you would never know if you weren't going through a divorce. So, to educate yourself doesn't mean that you don't trust your mediator or your divorce lawyer, but you're empowering yourself to be part of those decisions. And then what's going to happen is when you come up with those decisions, the compliance, you're gonna stick to the agreements more, you're gonna feel better about them because guess what? You came up with them, you and your ex, not a judge saying, "Here's how your custody schedule is gonna work."
Exactly. I always say the laws around divorce are your local legislature's best guess at what's going to work for you and your family. And I don't fault them. They're trying to come up with rules that are the best for the, largest population. But ultimately, every situation is unique, and a judge is not going to take the time to know your unique situation, but you know it and your spouse knows it. And so if you are able to work together with support if you need it to come up with good resolutions that are unique and tailored to you, those are going to be the best outcomes, longest lasting, better outcomes, in the long run. The other piece with education is managing the process. Like, you hire, it's springtime. Someone was working in our yard today, and I'm looking out there and I realized that they were doing something incorrectly, which they didn't know, but I knew that that wasn't supposed to go there. And I run out there and I tell them, that the tree was being put in the wrong place. I was managing the people that I've hired to help me because I have the underlying understanding. So you are going to hire perhaps lawyers or mediators, coaches, whoever you hire. Your job is to manage them, but you're managing them in this highly emotive state. And at a time in which, you've got fear and worry and all of these emotions that we all know clouds our ability to understand, comprehend, and make good decisions. So, one of the reasons why I created Partwise is not to replace any other professionals out there. But it adds to it. It allows you to educate yourself beforehand, before you even start the process. But when you're in the process, no lawyer is available to you 24 hours a day for a very low cost to answer questions that you might feel. I mean, we all know they say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but we all worry every once in a while that we're asking a stupid question. And here, like, just get on it. There's 500 glossary terms. I just had a client who called me up and asked about a quick claim deed, and she called it quick, and it's actually quit with a T. And I spent, 5 minutes talking to her about it, explained it to her. That was great. That's on Partwise. If she had that question, she can go on there. She can get answers to questions just to feel a little bit more comfortable moving forward.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more in detail about what else is on Partwise. So basically, you can just go in there and you can find the answer to any question if you're embarrassed to ask your attorney or you don't want to wait for the call back or you don't want to pay the
Right.
attorney. Just look it up. And I bet you, because I'm on it right now, I bet you would say like, "Oh, wait a minute, what about this?" And then you would just start reading and it's like a totally free course. Well, it's not free, but for a very reasonable cost, you're getting an education that is going to help you make better decisions, and it's probably gonna speed up the divorce because you're gonna kinda know what you're doing and you don't you know, you can make the decisions better and with more certainty.
Yeah. It's really broken apart to the way that I think through divorce, the work that we do, that the client does. We've really kind of mapped out the client path. And I've done this work for over 20 years. I've worked on almost 1,000 divorces. I think I'm up to like 980 divorces I've worked on. So I have experience with sort of every situation. So there's a whole getting started piece, which is all of the beforehand. How do you deal with an attorney? What processes are there? What are different professionals even like? So you've got everything that comes before you even get into the substance of the decisions. How to pay your attorney, what to do if you don't like your attorney, all of the things that you would need about working and preparing. Then you have the big financial areas and the parenting side. So it walks through everything you need to know about dividing assets. Every asset you could think of is in there. You can ignore it if you don't have stock options, or if you don't own a house, you can skip those sections. If you have it, we've got everything in there you need, as well as sample documents, examples to walk you through it. Then there's cash flow. So that's budgeting, spousal maintenance or spousal support, child support, direct expenses, everything you need to know about managing day to day. There's parenting, and then there's everything you need to know for after the divorce. So we've got all of those stages mapped out. And then, like you said, you can search for anything you want, and then it's all interconnected. So if you start out with a question, how do I value retirement? You're going to find that, and then you're going to find information on every different type of retirement. And then how do you divide the retirement, and what happens after the divorce is done? And what if you want to cash it out? I mean, it just really covers everything that we could think of on every topic that seems, I think, would be relevant to a client going through it.
I love this. So it says there's 70 learning modules. So it's self-guided. You can use it whenever you want. You can look at it in the middle of the night if you want. You can just say, okay, I'm going to have my coffee and learn about this today. And by the time you've gone through it all, you kind of understand the divorce business. So you're equipped to work so much more efficiently with your divorce professionals. And by the way, I want to talk about the importance of a divorce team. So, we talked about the importance of support. A lot of people hear the term divorce team, and they automatically in their head think cha-ching, cha-ching, it's going to be expensive to have all these professionals. What do you have to say about that?
I think it can be, but it doesn't need to be. And I think when it is expensive, that's because you needed it. And you needed the extra support. I think that, again, how you manage your professionals is key. And the professionals that you choose is really important. If you have a good divorce coach, that could cut down on a ton of legal fees, because that coach is going to help you narrow down your goals. It's going to help with your communication. It's really going to get you emotionally prepared so you can cut down on the legal needs of having the lawyer fill that role for you. And similarly, a mediator can be super efficient. The two of you work with a mediator alone. And then lawyers can just draft if you can get it done. There's so many ways to use professionals in efficient manners. It's really about what you need and the kind of support. And I also always warn people, it can be uneven between the two of you. One spouse may need a lot more support than the other. And when I have clients who are the spouse that doesn't need as much support, they're often upset. Like, why is my spouse calling their lawyer all the time? And why do we have all of these fees? And I usually point out that they're going to need that. Like, some people just need more support, and we just have to kind of allow for that. I think education helps again, and feeling more comfortable and confident. But sometimes one person just needs more help, and that's okay. Typically, people don't play different roles after divorce or during divorce than they did during the marriage. So when somebody calls me up and is like, he's always late to get the kids, my first response is, well, was he on time during the marriage? And the response is typically like, no, he's never been on time. Well, he's probably not going to be on time now. So, like, let's just similarly, if somebody is a little bit more worried, a little less secure in decisions, they might need more support. And that's kind of understandable and just part of the process.
Wow, I love it. And I love that you brought up the part about the divorce coach saving you money, because a lot of people will say to me that ask me about divorce coaches, and I'm a huge fan of divorce coaches. They say, like, well, it's 3,600, whatever they charge. It can go anywhere from 2 to 1,000 and up.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, that's a lot of money. And I'll say, well, for the 3,600, you could probably save 50 to $100,000 because that's how much help they provide. So I guess the message I'm trying to say is think long term and strategically instead of like about the costs that you're incurring now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think preparing, getting the right professionals, I think all of that should go to 2 goals, like keep the cost down if you can. Of course, everyone wants to do that. You don't wanna spend money on the divorce, you need it after the divorce. So you wanna keep costs down, but you do wanna manage that with getting through the process and having workable outcomes. So you're always trying to balance those 2, and clients who are so worried about money that they don't get the professionals they need, I think ultimately end up either spending more on the process or getting worse outcomes at the end. And ultimately, if they had spent that money up front, they may have been financially better off.
Absolutely. Kimberly, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast.
I'm really happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to learn more about Partwise, go to part-wise.com. Real simple, real easy, really effective way to educate yourself in a really quick way on divorce and have a better process and a better outcome. And you can also find Partwise in the Divorced Girl Smiling Trusted Professional section by going to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. You can also go there to listen to more podcasts, read articles, or sign up for my free consult. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.